Welcome to Stay Beneath the Floorboards, a haunting tale set in a forgotten attic wrapped in the shadows of a Victorian house. This horror audiobook dives deep into the whispers of the unknown, where every creak has a name and the silence listens. This is the haunted world of Maya and Lydia, the girl who never left. I never liked attics. There's something off about rooms tucked beneath a roof, like they weren't meant to be lived in. Slanted ceilings that press down on you, floorboards that moan like they're sick of being walked on, and silence that hums with secrets. Still, when Mr. Elwood showed me the place, I said yes. The rent was cheap, too cheap, but the university had drained most of my savings, and I didn't feel like sharing another loud, overcrowded student flat. The house sat at the edge of a quiet street, old, Victorian, wrapped in ivy. 3 floors, all carved into rooms for rent. My attic was at the very top, tucked behind a narrow stairway that twisted like a spine. "I hope the space is big enough," Mr. Elwood said with that odd half-smile of his, the kind that showed no teeth. Attics are cozy. Some students find it peaceful, others don't stay long. I frowned at that. "Because of the stairs?" He chuckled. "Something like that. The room itself wasn't awful. Slanted walls, yes, but decent light. A small window overlooking the street. Wooden beams. It smelled of dust and old books. Strangely comforting. There was even a tiny writing desk in the corner. I could already see myself there, drinking cheap coffee, working on my thesis. I signed the lease that same afternoon. "Welcome to number 13. Mr. Elwood handed me the key. His fingers were pale and cold. "Try not to wake the house. It sleeps lightly." I assumed he was joking. That night, I unpacked slowly. The air felt heavier up there, like it clung to my skin. Every creak of the floor sounded like a whisper. Still, I told myself it was an old house. Old houses talk. That's what Clara would have said. I called her once I'd settled. She picked up instantly. "You alive?" "Barely," I said, flopping onto the narrow bed. Stairs almost killed me, but I made it. The attic's weird, but kind of beautiful. "Weird how?" I hesitated. "Hard to explain. It's like it's too quiet, even outside. No traffic? None, not even birds." "That's creepy," Clara said with a laugh. "You're sure your landlord isn't some retired serial killer?" I glanced at the closed door. "He's definitely strange," I whispered. "Talks like a priest in a horror movie." "Oh, good," she said. "You're absolutely going to die." I laughed, but it was forced. Something about Mr. Elwood's smile stayed with me, like it was meant for someone else. "I'll survive," I said. "Besides, it's just for a semester." There was a pause. Then Clara's voice dropped. "Maya, you're okay though, right?" "Yeah," I replied, softer now, just tired. "This place, it reminds me of something. I don't know what. A dream? Maybe. Or a memory, I thought. Something old and cold." I went to bed around midnight. It took forever to fall asleep. Every tick of the wall clock echoed too loud. The house shifted like it was breathing. At some point, I don't know when, I woke up. It was dark, the kind of dark that erases shapes. I checked the time. 3:30. 3 a.m. The silence had changed. It wasn't silent anymore. I sat up slowly, blinking into the black. The sound was faint, muffled, almost gentle, like someone speaking beneath a blanket. No, not speaking, whispering, low and wet, like words spoken through tears. It was coming from the floor. I froze. Every instinct told me to run, to leave, to scream, but I didn't. I pressed my palm to the wooden floorboard beside the bed, and it vibrated. Just a little, like someone was breathing underneath it. Then a voice, faint, cracked, impossibly close. "Maya." My name. I didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. The whisper of my name still echoed behind my eyes, coiled like smoke in the air. It hadn't been in my head, it had come from below, from under the goddamn floorboards. I stared at the floor in the dark. Nothing moved. The old planks just sat there, innocent as ever. Except now I was certain they had a mouth. The voice had been childlike, dry, broken, like it hadn't spoken in years. I stayed frozen for a long time, long enough for the whisper to fade and the fear to settle into a cold knot in my stomach. Eventually, I crawled back into bed without turning on the light. Like if I didn't see it, it couldn't touch me. But sleep didn't come easy, and when it did, it came with dreams. A hallway made of rotting wood, a door I couldn't open, and a pair of pale eyes staring at me from under a floor stained black. The next morning, I stared into my cup of instant coffee like it owed me answers. The light through the attic window was gray and cold. The dream was still clinging to my skin. My phone buzzed. Clara. I answered without hesitation. "Hey, you sound like you got possessed last night." I gave a dry laugh. "Not far off." "Creepy noises?" I hesitated. "You're gonna think I'm being dramatic." "You are dramatic, but spill it anyway." I sighed. "I woke up around 3:30. Something whispered my name from under the floor." Silence. Then, "Okay, that's messed up. Yeah, like, could it have been a neighbor? Pipes, vents? No vents, no pipes under the floorboards. And it sounded close, Clara, like someone was down there, under my bed." Jesus. Another pause. "You want me to come over tonight?" She offered gently. "We can do a horror movie and I'll sleep on the floor. I'll protect you from creepy attic goblins." I smiled, genuinely this time. "You'd probably make friends with the ghost." "Only if it brings wine." I needed to clear my head before class, so I went down to get some fresh air. Mr. Elwood was watering the dead flowers in the front garden, wearing a cardigan that looked older than me. He noticed me instantly. "Good morning, Miss Maya," he said. "How was your first night?" There was something about the way he asked, like he already knew. "It was fine," I lied, "just a little noisy." His smile deepened, but his eyes stayed empty. Old houses like to talk. Don't take it personally. "Do they usually say people's names?" I asked before I could stop myself. He blinked slowly, still watering a flower that wasn't there. "Names?" he said softly. "No, not usually." Then he turned and walked back inside. I couldn't focus in class. Every time someone dropped a book or a chair scraped against the floor, I flinched. Something in me had shifted last night. It wasn't just fear, it was recognition. Like whatever voice had called me, knew me. I messaged Clara after lunch, "Bring snacks, and maybe sage." Her reply came seconds later. "On my way. If we die, I blame you." She arrived around 6 with 2 bags and an oversized hoodie that said Demon Slayer Club. The moment she stepped into the attic, she wrinkled her nose. "God, it smells like books and something dead. It's probably me," I said. "I haven't eaten real food in 2 days." We sat on the floor with popcorn and soda, trying to ignore how the ceiling sloped down like it was listening. I didn't bring up the whisper again right away. I wanted to pretend, just for a little while, that we were normal girls in a normal room. Halfway through a cheesy horror flick, Clara turned to me. Her face had gone serious. "Hey, when you said the voice knew your name, did it sound like a person?" I nodded. "Like a girl, a young girl." Her eyes flicked to the floor. "That's specific." I leaned back against the wall. "You think I imagined it?" "No," she said quietly. "I think maybe someone didn't want to be forgotten." Something about the way she said that made the air colder. We didn't talk for a while after that. That night, Clara fell asleep on the floor with a blanket and her phone still in her hand. I stayed awake, watching the ceiling, listening. At 3:33 a.m. it happened again. A soft thud, a rustle beneath the boards, then a whisper. Different this time, not my name. Just one word, "stay." and then crying. Not loud, not wailing, just soft, endless weeping, the kind that made you feel it in your bones. I turned to look at Clara. She was still asleep, but her hand twitched, and her eyes, even closed, were wet, like she'd heard it too. Clara didn't remember the crying. When I asked her the next morning, she blinked groggily and rubbed her eyes. "No, I passed out during that awful second movie. Why?" "You stirred," I said carefully, watching her. "Your face was wet." "Wet?" she echoed, confused. "Like tears?" I nodded. "I didn't wake you. I wasn't sure if you'd heard it too." She sat up slowly. The blanket fell off her shoulder and she hugged it around her knees. "What did you hear?" I hesitated. She said, "Stay." Then she cried. It felt like it came from right beneath us. Clara didn't laugh this time. She didn't roll her eyes or crack a joke. She just looked at the floor, lips pressed into a tight line. "I think we should figure out who she is," she finally said. "If there's something tied to this place, maybe it's old. Maybe it's been happening to others." I nodded. "There's a professor at uni. Haldane, he teaches folklore. I could ask him if there's anything connected to this street." Clara's voice softened. "And? If there is? Then we find out why she's still here," I said, "and what she wants." Later that day, Clara left to meet her brother. I stayed behind. The attic felt different after she was gone. Too quiet. Like it had been waiting for me to be alone again. The air had that weight again, the kind that presses into your spine. I sat at the desk and opened my laptop, pretending to study, but my eyes kept drifting to the floorboards near the bed. The same ones that had vibrated. The same spot the voice had come from. Eventually, curiosity won. I got up, crouched beside the bed, and pressed my ear to the wood. Nothing. But then, a tick. Not a creak. Not a house noise. A tick, like a fingernail on wood. Repetitive, careful, like something was tapping from the inside. I flinched back, heart hammering. No, 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 no. I grabbed my phone and called Clara again. She didn't pick up. Probably still with her brother. I didn't want to sound crazy on a voicemail, so I texted instead. "It's still happening, not loud this time, just tapping, like she's trying to talk again." She didn't reply. I didn't blame her. By the time I went to class the next morning, I felt like a zombie. My hands trembled when I scribbled notes. I couldn't stop glancing at the clock. Not because I was bored, but because I didn't want 3:33 to ever come again. I found Professor Haldane after the lecture. He was organizing books at the front of the classroom, a tall, angular man with a calm voice and deep eyes. I'd never spoken to him outside class, but today I waited until the others were gone. "Professor?" I asked. He looked up, offering a small smile. "Maya, right? Literature student. Attic essays are solid." I smiled awkwardly. "Thanks. I actually wanted to ask you something kind of weird." He raised a brow, intrigued. "I'm a folklore professor. Weird is the job description." I glanced around, then leaned in. "Have you ever heard stories about Sycamore Street? Number 13 specifically?" Haldane stilled. Something flickered in his expression. He set the book down. "There've always been rumors," he said after a moment. "Disappearances. One girl in the 70s, another in the late 90s. Both students, both last seen in that house." "Both lived in the attic?" "I believe so, yes." I swallowed. "Do you remember their names?" "The second one was Lydia." My skin turned to ice. He noticed. "Why do you ask?" "I've been hearing things." A girl's voice, whispers, dreams. She said my name once. Haldane looked at me for a long moment, then he slowly walked to his desk, pulled out an old folder and handed it to me. Inside was a grainy photo. A girl, 17 maybe, pale hair, wide, serious eyes. There was something about her mouth, closed tightly, like she had secrets stitched inside. "Lydia Hargrove," he said. "Vanished in 1998. No signs of forced entry, no body. Her roommate said she'd started acting strange, sleepwalking, talking to herself, kept saying she heard someone under the floor." I stared at the photo. My fingers tingled. "She's the one," I whispered. She's still there. When I got back to the house that evening, the front door creaked louder than usual. Mr. Elwood stood in the hallway, staring up the stairs like he'd been waiting. I paused. "I spoke to someone today," I said, "about Lydia." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Did you now? I know she lived here, in my room." "I've rented to many students," he replied quietly. "Names get lost, stories twist, but not the dead," I said, bolder than I felt. He tilted his head. "Be careful what you chase, Miss Maya. Some voices don't want to be found. They want to be followed." Then he turned and vanished into the dark hallway. That night, I placed the photo of Lydia under my pillow. I don't know why. Maybe I hoped it would calm her, let her know I was listening. At 3:33, I woke up again. No whisper this time. But the mirror across the room, the one built into the wardrobe, had fogged from the inside, and a handprint was pressed to the glass, small, delicate, but unmistakably there. The handprint didn't vanish right away. I stared at it for what felt like hours. It sat there, delicate fingers pressed against the inside of the mirror, slightly smeared, like whoever left it had tried to reach through. I didn't dare touch it. I lay back down and stared at the ceiling, heart racing, unable to sleep. Morning came like a mercy. I met Clara at our favorite coffee spot near campus, and the moment she saw me, she raised an eyebrow. "Jesus, you look like you got hit by a bus." "Didn't sleep," I muttered. "Again." She handed me a coffee before I even ordered. "Tell me everything." We sat by the window and I spilled it all. The mirror, the photo, Professor Haldane, Lydia's name. Clara listened, quiet and focused. No jokes this time. "So," she said slowly, "Lydia's ghost is in your room, possibly reaching out from mirrors, and your landlord is acting like a Victorian vampire." "Basically." Clara sipped her drink, then leaned forward. "You believe it now, don't you?" I hesitated. I didn't. "But yeah, I do. And I don't think she wants to hurt me." "That's comforting, because I do." "For dragging me into a real-life haunting." I smiled weakly. "You don't have to come back." "Hell no, I'm coming back," Clara said, eyes fierce. "If you're staying in that house, I'm not leaving you alone in it." That's Clara. When it gets dark, she's the one who brings the light, even if she's scared too. Later that afternoon, Clara came over with something tucked under her arm. "Found this in the university archive," she said, dropping a yellowed folder on the bed. "Old newspaper clippings." She spread them out across the desk. We read in silence. "Local student missing, 1998, no signs of forced entry, police baffled." She said she could hear voices, friend says. Lydia Hargrove, age 19, last seen entering Sycamore Street boarding house, never seen again. The last article was the worst. It showed a blurry photo of the house, my house, with the attic window in view. A police officer stood out front, and in the corner, just barely visible behind the curtain, was a pale shape. Clara squinted. "That's a person." I nodded slowly. "But Lydia was already gone when this was taken," she looked at me. "Then who the hell is that?" I didn't have an answer. That night, Clara stayed over again. We lit a candle, not because we believed in rituals, but because the warm light made the room feel less haunted. She sat cross-legged on the floor, tracing the edges of the photo of Lydia with her fingertip. "You ever wonder what she was like?" she asked softly. "All the time. I mean, she lived in this room, slept where you sleep. She had classes, friends, probably late-night ramen runs and stupid dreams just like us." I nodded. Then something changed. Something broke her. Her voice cracked a little, and I turned toward her. Her face was pensive, but her eyes were full of something more. Grief, maybe. Or fear. "You okay?" I asked. She forced a smile. "Just creeped out. I keep thinking, what if it's not just a ghost? What if there's something else in that house? Something that wants her to stay?" The air shifted. We both felt it. Around 2:30, Clara finally dozed off. I stayed awake again, the candle flickering low. My eyes were heavy, but the silence kept me on edge. And then it happened. A whisper, low, almost like breath through a cracked door. "Don't trust him." I sat up slowly. The voice had come from the wall this time, near the wardrobe. "Lydia?" I whispered. No answer. I waited, listening, breath caught in my throat. Then the mirror began to fog again, slowly, as if someone were breathing against it. This time words formed in the condensation. "Below, help me." My skin went ice cold. I reached for the journal where I'd been tracking everything, every whisper, every hour, every detail, and jotted it down, heart pounding. I didn't want to forget this. I couldn't afford to. Because now Lydia wasn't just crying, she was speaking. And whoever she was warning me about, I was starting to think I already knew his name. I didn't tell Clara what I saw in the mirror until morning. She was half asleep, arms tangled in the blanket, her hair a chaotic halo around her face. I watched her for a few moments, debating whether to say anything, whether I wanted her to worry the way I was already starting to. She blinked awake slowly. "You've been up all night again." "I couldn't sleep," I admitted. She spoke again. Clara sat up, instantly alert. "What did she say?" I hesitated. "Two things. First, don't trust him. Then, below, help me." Clara's face paled. "Below?" I nodded. "I think she means under the floorboards." She glanced at the old planks. "Maya, that's insane." "I know," I said quickly. "But everything that's happened, the whispers, the mirror, the tapping, it's all coming from that spot near the bed. I think there's something under there. Something that belonged to her, or maybe still does." There was a long pause. Then Clara spoke, her voice low. Then, "We have to look." It took us hours to get through the floorboards. We used a flathead screwdriver, a rusted hammer from the basement, and our bare hands. The wood creaked in protest, nails groaned as they came loose one by one. Mr. Elwood didn't seem to be home. Or maybe he was and just chose not to interfere. The space beneath was shallow, maybe a foot deep, but long and full of dust. A bitter, earthy smell rose from the darkness. Clara gagged. "God, it stinks." I reached in first, brushing through the dust with my fingers. Something dry and papery crunched under my hand. I pulled out a small, cracked doll. Porcelain, one eye missing. Its painted lips smeared into a permanent, almost mocking grin. Clara winced. "That's not creepy at all." There was more. A clump of hair, matted and tied with a rotted ribbon. A child's bracelet, the bead spelling out Lydia. And finally a torn corner of a journal, pages curled and yellowed with age. I opened it carefully. Most of the writing was faded, but one line near the bottom was still legible. "He comes at night, smiling, always smiling. I pretend I'm asleep." Clara swallowed hard. "That's about Mr. Elwood, isn't it?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. We laid the items out on the bed, one by one, like a crime scene. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Clara looked at the journal again. She was scared of him. She wrote it down, and now she's warning you. "She said not to trust him," I whispered. Clara nodded slowly. "So what now?" "We find out what he did to her." "Should we go to the police?" I shook my head. "With what? A doll and a line from an old diary? They'd laugh us out of the station." She slumped back against the wall. "Then what do we do, Maya?" I didn't know. But one thing was clear. Lydia wasn't going to stop until we understood. She'd waited too long already, and the more I thought about it, the more I felt her presence. Not malevolent, not angry, just desperate. Desperate to be found. That night I stayed awake alone. Clara had to go home, family dinner or something. She promised to come back the next day. The air in the attic felt heavier than usual. Every creak was louder, every shadow thicker. I sat on the edge of the bed, the doll and journal resting beside me, staring at the open patch of floor like it might whisper back. At 3:33 a.m., something did happen, but it wasn't a whisper. It was a dragging sound. From under the floor, slow, like fingernails scraping along wood. It moved beneath me, passing under the bed, then toward the desk, then back again. Then silence. I was paralyzed, my skin crawled, my breath came in short, fast gasps. And then the most terrifying sound of all. A knock. 3 sharp taps from beneath the planks, like someone wanted out. I didn't sleep after that. The next morning I called Professor Haldane again. I needed more. I needed everything he had. He met me at the campus library, already waiting with an armful of clippings and photocopies. I did some digging, he said. And I think I was wrong before. Lydia wasn't the only one who disappeared in that house. There were 3 others, all within a 30-year window. All female, all students. I felt sick. Why wasn't it ever shut down? He sighed. No evidence, no bodies, just disappearances. And the landlord, he's owned that house for decades, but there's barely anything on him. No previous address, no family, just silence. I stared at him. What if he did something to them? I can't prove that, Maya, but what if I can? I left with a folder of names. One stood out, a girl named Elise Brenner. Missing in 1975, also lived in the attic. When I got back to the house, the hallway was dim. Mr. Elwood wasn't in the garden. His door downstairs was closed. I climbed the steps quietly, heart pounding. The attic door creaked open as usual. The room felt different again, colder, like it was waiting. I stepped over the exposed floorboards and sat down, holding Lydia's bracelet in one hand, the journal page in the other. I know what he did to you, I whispered. I'm going to help you, I promise. The mirror fogged again, slowly, deliberately, and then, in the center, hurry. I spent the rest of that day in a strange haze, not quite fear, not quite exhaustion, something in between, a low, constant hum in my brain that wouldn't let me rest. The word hurry burned behind my eyes like it had been branded there. Clara came back that evening, slamming the attic door shut behind her and dropping her bag with a grunt. All right, she said, breathless. You text me the word hurry and disappear all day? I've had 3 stress migraines. I sat at the desk, staring at the torn journal page. I saw the mirror again, I said. She left a message. That's all it said. Clara crossed her arms. Hurry for what, exactly? What does she want us to do? I hesitated. I think she's still trapped here. Not just spiritually. I think part of her is still physically here. Beneath the house, maybe worse. Clara paled. Like a body? I nodded slowly. She sat beside me, silent for a long time. Do you realize how messed up this is? Yes. You're serious about finding her? I made her a promise. Clara looked at me, really looked, and something shifted between us. A shared dread, a deepening loyalty. Her voice softened. Then, whatever happens. That night I did something I wasn't proud of. I waited until Clara fell asleep. I waited until the room was so still that I could hear her breathing shift with every dream. Then I got out of bed, took Lydia's bracelet and journal page and approached the mirror. It was already fogging. Before I could speak, the surface shimmered like water, and then a face began to appear. It wasn't like before, not a suggestion or a smudge. It was clear. A girl's face, pale, hollow-eyed. Her lips barely moved when she whispered, I remember you. My voice caught in my throat. What? Her hand pressed to the glass. You were here, she breathed. When I was still alive. You came with your mother. You looked at the ceiling. You said you didn't like it. My knees buckled. I remembered it, faintly, A visit when I was 5. I remembered crying in the hallway. I remembered saying it felt wrong. "That was you," I whispered. Lydia's eyes glistened. "I tried to warn you." I reached out and touched the mirror, my hand aligned with hers. It was cold. Not glass cold, grave cold. "Why are you still here?" I asked. She blinked slowly. "He didn't let me go." "Mr. Elwood?" Her face twitched, almost pained. "He smiles," she said, "but he doesn't blink. He took things. First the voice, then the body, then the light." I didn't know what that meant, but I didn't interrupt her, I just listened. She leaned in close, her voice now a rasp. "Below the house, the crawl space. He hides them, all of us. He made it a cage." I whispered, "How do I open it?" Her mouth moved. One word, blood. The mirror shattered. Clara woke with a scream. I was on the floor, hands cut, blood dripping from my fingertips. "What the hell happened?" she cried, rushing to me. "Are you okay?" I shook my head, dazed, trying to form words. The mirror lay in jagged shards. My reflection stared back in dozens of broken pieces. "She showed herself," I said. "I think I've been here before." Clara knelt beside me, grabbing tissues and wrapping my hand. "What does that even mean? I think I was meant to come back. Why you?" "I don't know yet, but I know where we need to go." She met my eyes. I said, "The crawl space, under the house." We waited until morning. Mr. Elwood wasn't in the garden. His car was gone. Clara watched from the attic window while I found the key in his supply closet. It was old, rusted, and unlabeled, but it felt right. We found the crawl space door behind the kitchen wall, a tiny panel half hidden under old coats and dusty shelving. The key fit. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow wooden tunnel that sloped into darkness. It smelled of wet earth, rot, and something older. Clara covered her mouth. "If we die down there, I'm haunting your textbooks," I smirked. "Deal." We stepped inside together. The crawl space was tight. I had to crouch low, hands brushing against the cold dirt. Clara kept close behind me, her phone flashlight flickering in and out. We passed old furniture, broken crates, and rotted beams, like a forgotten underworld beneath the house. And then we saw it. A wooden trunk, padlocked shut, the lid stained with something dark, something long dried. Clara knelt down. "Is this it?" "I think so," I whispered. My heart thundered. This is where he kept her. I reached out with shaking hands. The lock fell open like it had been waiting, and when we lifted the lid, we found more than bones. We found 3 sets of them, each wrapped in torn sheets, each wearing pieces of old student uniforms, and tucked beneath them, almost delicately placed, Lydia's other journal. Clara covered her mouth with both hands. I just stared. "I told you," I whispered, tears burning my eyes. He'd never let them go. And then we heard something above us, footsteps, slow, deliberate, heading toward the attic. Mr. Elwood was home. We didn't speak as we sealed the crawl space door behind us. My hands still trembled, my brain buzzed, overloaded, not with fear anymore, but with fury. He had buried them, all of them. Lydia, Elise, the girl from the 70s, left them to rot in silence as if they never mattered. And he lived above them, watered flowers, smiled. Clara and I sat on the attic floor for what felt like hours. I couldn't stop shaking. "He killed them," I said, voice hoarse. "He lived here for years, pretending to be someone harmless. But he was feeding on it, on them." Clara's face was pale, hollow. "We need to go to the police, now, before he realizes what we found." I nodded slowly, but the thought of leaving the attic, of stepping into the hallway, of hearing that voice call my name in the dark, made my stomach knot. I stood up and grabbed Lydia's second journal. "We're not going anywhere without this." But before we could take a single step, someone knocked on the attic door. We both froze. Another knock. Louder. Not Elwood's rhythm. This one was fast, nervous. Clara reached for the hammer we'd used on the floorboards, holding it like a bat. I inched to the door and opened it just enough to peek. It wasn't Elwood. It was Elias, the neighbor from the floor below. He looked awful. Dark circles under his eyes, sweat clinging to his forehead, hands twitching at his sides. When he saw me, he exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for days. "I heard it again," he said. "The crying. It won't stop. I think she's in my room now. I saw her, Maya, in the corner. She was watching me." I let him in without another word. Elias sat on the floor between us, wiping his hands on his jeans, voice trembling. "I tried to ignore it for weeks," he said. "At first it was just creaks. Then the mirror started fogging. She didn't speak to me, not at first, just stared, sometimes cried. I thought it was just my imagination." Clara gave me a look. I nodded. "She spoke to us," I said. "She showed us where he kept them." Elias blinked. "Them? She's not the only one," Clara whispered. "There are more." He stared at the floor. "I knew it. I knew there was something wrong with him." "You knew Mr. Elwood was involved?" Elias nodded slowly. "He came to my room once, said I was making too much noise. But I hadn't been home all day. He looked different. Cold, like something had turned off behind his eyes." "He's hiding something darker than a body count," I murmured. "Lydia said he took her voice, her body, her light." "What does that even mean?" Clara asked. "I don't know," I said, clutching the journal. "But she's still here, and I don't think she's the only one." We spent the next hour flipping through Lydia's journal. This one was fuller, not just scraps and desperate lines, but full pages. She wrote about the house, the way the walls moved at night, the sound of chains dragging in the crawl space. She described dreams that weren't hers, nightmares of other girls trapped with her. "He feeds on pain," one entry read. "He doesn't age. He smiles when we scream. The house keeps us." I turned the page. "He said I was chosen, that I was special, but I think it was the room, the attic. It knows who to call." Clara leaned in. "She's talking about you." "I know," I whispered. Elias shifted uncomfortably. "If the house chooses." "Why now? Why you?" I hesitated. "Because I was here before, when I was little. Lydia remembered me. She said I was the only one who ever noticed something was wrong." Silence settled between us. Then Clara spoke. "You think this is about unfinished business?" "I think this is about freedom," I said. "She wants to be released, and I think the house, or whatever Elwood did to it, won't let that happen until he's gone." Elias's voice dropped to a whisper. "Then we make him leave." I looked at him. "How?" He took a deep breath. "There's a door in the basement, locked. I asked about it when I moved in. He said it was just storage. But I've heard things down there. Whispers, humming, sometimes scratching." "Another crawl space?" Clara asked. "Maybe worse," he said. "Maybe the real source of it all." We agreed to meet again the next night. Elias would sneak into the basement after Elwood went to bed. Clara and I would bring the journals. If Lydia had anything more to show us, we'd be ready. But deep down, I knew what was coming. The final pieces were falling into place. Lydia's pain was growing sharper. I could feel her in the walls now, in the cold spots that followed me like shadows, and somewhere beneath us, something was stirring, watching, waiting, and smiling. It started with a scent, faint but unmistakable. Rotting flowers. I was brushing my teeth the next morning when it hit me, like a breeze carrying something long dead. I leaned over the sink, gagging, the toothpaste burning the back of my throat. But when I looked up, it wasn't my reflection staring back at me. It was Lydia. Her face, pale and hollow-eyed, flickered across the glass like a dying flame. She didn't speak. She just stared, Then she smiled, but it wasn't for comfort. It was a warning. Clara noticed I was off that morning. We were sitting on the attic floor trying to map out our plan with Elias. "You didn't sleep again," she said, nudging my leg. "Nope." "You look like crap." "Thanks." "You're welcome." I let out a dry chuckle and rubbed my temples. She came again, but it wasn't like before. It was intentional, like she was trying to show me something or remind me. Clara sat up straighter. "What did she show you?" "Not much, just her face." And then she smiled. Not like she was happy, like she knew something. Elias had joined us earlier and now leaned forward, voice quiet. "You said she remembered you. From when you were a kid." I nodded. "You think she's trying to trigger a memory?" "I think she already has." After Elias left to prepare the basement entrance, Clara and I sat alone. I stared out the attic window, watching clouds gather over Sycamore Street. The sky looked bruised. "I think I blocked it out," I said softly. Clara turned toward me. "Blocked what out?" "The first time I was here, I was little, maybe 5. My mom brought me with her. She was visiting a friend, I think. I remember this exact room. I remember hating it. I said it smelled weird. I wouldn't go inside." Clara said nothing, just listened. "There was a girl," I whispered. "She was standing in the hallway. Pale, quiet. She looked right at me. And I cried. I told my mom there was someone in the attic. She said I was being dramatic. I looked down at my hands. They were shaking again. That girl was Lydia, and I think she never forgot me." Clara placed her hand on mine. "That's why she picked you, because you saw her before anyone else ever did." "I could have saved her," I said. "Even back then, I knew something was wrong." "You were 5, Maya." "I was enough." Tears welled up before I could stop them. Clara didn't speak. She just held my hand tighter. The attic felt impossibly cold. That evening I called my mom. I hadn't spoken to her in days. She picked up quickly, her voice bright, but there was something brittle beneath it. "Maya, everything okay?" "Kind of a weird question," I began. "Did we ever visit someone on Sycamore Street when I was little? A woman? Maybe a boarding house?" There was a long pause. "Why are you asking me that?" "I think I've been here before. A long time ago," my mom exhaled slowly. "I wasn't sure you remembered." "Why didn't you ever say anything?" "Because you had nightmares for months afterward. You kept waking up crying. Said there was a girl in the ceiling." My breath caught. "So it was real." "I don't know what we walked into that day," she said, her voice trembling now, "but I remember the look in your eyes. You were terrified. I promised myself I'd never take you back there." "You said we were visiting someone." "We were," she said. "My cousin. She was renting a room there. But she only lasted 2 weeks before she moved out. She said the house was wrong." "And you never thought to tell me I was moving back into that place?" "I didn't know until it was too late," she said. "When you told me the address, I got chills. I just thought, maybe it was just an old house, maybe you'd be okay." I couldn't speak. My throat felt tight. Her voice softened. "You were never supposed to go back there, Maya. That place wanted you." I hung up before I could cry again. By nightfall, the storm had arrived. Rain pelted the attic window like fingernails. Thunder rumbled low, constant. The whole house creaked with tension. Clara sat on the floor, arms wrapped around her knees. "Still think going into the basement's a good idea?" "It's not a good idea," I said, "but it's the only one we've got." The air was heavy, thick with pressure. Lydia was close. I could feel her moving through the walls, brushing against the edges of reality. I stood and pulled Lydia's bracelet from my pocket. I hadn't worn it, but I hadn't let it go either. "She said he took her light," I whispered. Clara looked up. "What if she meant her soul?" I turned toward her. "Then he's not just a killer. You think he's some kind of..." What? Demon? Something like it. The lights flickered, once, twice, then went out completely. We lit a candle and sat in the dark, waiting for Elias' message. When it finally came, my phone buzzed once. Basement doors open. Meet me now. Clara grabbed her coat and flashlight. I tucked the journal into my bag. We paused by the attic door. "You ready?" she asked. "No," I whispered, "but I think Lydia is." And with that, we descended into the belly of the house that had been waiting for me my entire life. The basement was colder than I expected. Not just no heating cold, but buried cold, like the air hadn't been touched by sunlight in years, maybe longer. Clara gripped the flashlight tightly in front of her, and I followed her down the narrow stairs, each step groaning under our weight. The candle I held flickered violently, casting our shadows in twisting shapes along the brick walls. Elias stood at the bottom, waiting. His face was pale, lips thin and tight, but his eyes had changed, not frightened anymore, just resigned. "There's something down here," he said without turning. "You can feel it, can't you?" I nodded. "Where is it?" He pointed toward the far wall, a place I would have missed completely if he hadn't known exactly where to look. It was old, uneven brick, but in the center was a panel of wood, a different texture, a different sound when he tapped it, a door. And carved into the center, crudely, violently, was a symbol, an eye surrounded by what looked like jagged roots or flames. Inside the eye was a tiny rune. "It's the same mark from Lydia's journal," I said. "She drew this." Elias stepped back. "I'm not going in there." Clara looked at me. "Do we even want to?" I swallowed the bile rising in my throat. "We have to." Behind the door there was another set of stairs, narrower. They led down into something older than the house itself. Stone walls, low ceilings, dirt floor. The air was wet somehow, like it breathed with us, and at the center of it all, the chamber. It wasn't large, but it felt infinite. The room hummed with tension. A circle of black candles lined the perimeter, melted down to stumps. Runes were etched into the floor with something red, dried, but not paint. At the far wall, an altar, not decorative, functional, blood-stained, and chained to its side, shattered bones. Old, crumbled, but still clinging to the iron. Clara gagged and turned away. I stepped closer. "This is where he brought them," I said quietly. "This is where he took them apart." We both turned as Elias spoke from the stairs. "There's something wrong with the house. It's not just him. He feeds it." I opened Lydia's journal. One of the last entries was smudged with tears. Or maybe blood. He said the house was alive. He said it needed us. That every scream made it stronger. That every death opened another door. Clara's voice cracked. "We need to destroy it, burn it, salt it, smash the damn place to the ground." But I was staring at something on the altar. A small box, black wood sealed with wax, etched with the same eye silhouette. I opened it slowly. Inside, hair, teeth, pieces of cloth, and something worse, a tongue dried and shriveled. "Oh my God," Clara whispered. "He kept them." "He took their voices," I said, my own voice shaking. "He took everything from them." That's when the singing started. It came from above, a low, rasping hum, off-key, inhuman. "Mr. Elwood." His voice was soft, delicate, joyful. "He knows we're down here," Elias whispered. I grabbed Lydia's bracelet from my pocket. "She's the key." She said blood was the answer. Clara looked at me. "You're bleeding again." I glanced down. A cut from earlier, small, just reopened. Drops of blood had hit the runes on the floor, and they were glowing. The hum turned into words, muffled, ancient, a language that didn't belong to anything human. The altar trembled, then the house did. The candlelight flared, shadows twisted, wind howled from nowhere. The room screamed, not with voices, but with memory. With every cry Lydia had ever swallowed, with every echo that never made it to the surface. The runes ignited in flame. I reached for the journal, yelling over the roar. She said he bound them to the house. If we break the ritual, they're free. Clara grabbed my wrist. Then break it. The black box, the totem, the anchor. I lifted it high and smashed it against the altar. It burst apart in an explosion of ash and air. The screams became voices, real, human, terrified. Lydia's was loudest. And then silence, pure, clean, dead. We climbed out of the chamber in stunned quiet. The basement door slammed shut behind us. The hallway was dark, still, and strangely empty. Mr. Elwood was gone. Not a trace. No car, no coat, no whisper. It was like he'd never been there. And maybe, in some ways, he never had. Maybe he was just the voice the house wore. Or maybe he was the house. We walked back up the stairs, every creak like a final breath. When we reached the attic, the air felt lighter. The mirror was clean, no fog, no handprint. Just me. Clara sat down on the bed. "Is it over?" I looked around. I couldn't feel Lydia anymore. Not the cold, not the pressure, just peace. "I think so," I said. "I think she's free." She looked at me. "So, what happens now?" I stared out the window, watching the storm break, the clouds opening just a little, sunlight creeping through for the first time in what felt like forever. "I don't know," I whispered. But deep down I knew something still lingered, because houses don't forget, and neither do the dead. We should have left that night. We should have packed a bag and walked out of that house forever, let it rot behind us. But we didn't. Clara insisted on staying one last night. To say goodbye, she said. I told myself it was fine. The air was clear, the mirror was quiet, Lydia was gone. The house was quiet, yes, but not empty. We made tea, talked, laughed even. Some part of us believed it was over, that we'd survived the horror and come out the other side changed, but alive. Clara curled up on the floor again, a blanket around her shoulders. Her voice was soft. "You think she's somewhere better now?" "I hope so." "You believe in that stuff?" "I didn't," I said. "But Lydia, she changed something in me." Clara glanced at the mirror. "She trusted you. That has to mean something." I nodded, staring at the bracelet in my hand. The beads spelling her name were cracked, worn smooth in places, like they'd been touched by someone who never wanted to be forgotten. I slipped it over my wrist. "I won't forget her," I said. At 3:33 a.m., I woke up. Not from a sound, not from a dream, from the feeling. The weight. The attic pressed down on me like the roof itself had sunk closer. The air turned cold, not like wind, but like a presence. Still, heavy. Clara shifted in her sleep, her brow furrowing. She whimpered softly. Then the lights, all of them, snapped on. The bulb above flickered violently, stuttering shadows across the walls. And in the mirror, he was there. Not Lydia, him, Mr. Elwood. Only it wasn't quite him anymore. His skin was stretched too tight, gray around the edges. His smile, wide, impossibly wide, had split across both cheeks like torn fabric. His eyes were empty sockets, black holes that bled smoke. I couldn't move. My body wouldn't let me. He raised one hand and pointed at me. And then I heard it. "She broke the seal. You opened the door. Now you belong to the house." I screamed, loud, raw. Clara jolted awake, eyes wide with panic. "What, Maya? What is it?" "The mirror," I shouted. "It's him. He's back. He's not gone." She scrambled to her feet and spun toward the wardrobe, just as the glass cracked from the inside. a single jagged line running down the center. "No," I said, stepping back. "We ended this. I ended it." But Elwood, the thing wearing his shape, only smiled wider. "The house is always hungry." And then the mirror shattered. Darkness erupted from it, not smoke, not shadow, something deeper, something alive. It poured into the room like water, like a scream without sound. Clara grabbed my hand. "Run." We bolted for the door. It slammed shut. Clara rattled the handle, pounding on the wood. "It won't open." "Back to the crawl space," I yelled. We turned, sprinting across the attic floor, but the boards groaned beneath us. Tilling like liquid, I saw hands reaching up, dozens of them, pale and thin, clawing at the surface. Faces appeared in the cracks, not Lydia, the others. Girls I didn't know, girls who never made it out, and they were all whispering the same word, "Stay." Clara stumbled. One of the hands caught her ankle and pulled. She screamed, kicking wildly. I dropped to the floor, grabbing her arms. "Hold on!" "I can't. It's pulling me." "You're not going down there. Not like them." I pulled harder, blood rushing to my ears, my heartbeat crashing like waves in a storm. The hands clawed, nails digging into her skin, and then suddenly, violently, they let go. We both fell back. Silence. And then, Lydia. Not a vision, not a ghost. She was there, standing in the center of the room, glowing faintly. Her eyes were soft now, no longer hollow. Her face was peaceful. She reached out, not to me, to the mirror, where Elwood still stood, snarling now, his shape glitching, flickering, collapsing. She spoke. "You can't take what was never yours." And with one final surge of light, Lydia placed her hand to the glass, and the reflection exploded into white. I woke up in the hallway. Clara was beside me, coughing, dazed. The attic door stood open. The mirror was gone. Not broken, gone. The space where it had hung was empty wall. The bracelet had snapped from my wrist. The beads spelled out nothing now, just plastic and string. But I knew Lydia was gone. Not trapped. Free. The house was sold a month later. The new tenants never stayed more than a few nights. I moved across town. Clara, too. We don't talk about that last night much. Some things are better left buried. But sometimes, around 3:30 in the morning, I wake up, and I swear I hear someone moving upstairs. Not whispering, just waiting. Thank you for listening to Stay Beneath the Floorboards. If this story chilled you to your core, leave your thoughts, theories, and ghost sightings in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss another haunting tale. And remember, in this world, some houses are always awake, always whispering, always waiting.